Okay. So, final session is around, I suppose I called it policy guidance, but it's generally more about less how to do safe system assessments, but more when to do them, practical issues of how you do them within projects, analysing their value and a few other things. But let's jump into it. We've hit the record button, so you can watch it again if you want. And the end of this module, we're really looking for you to be able to understand and I suppose restate some of the benefits of safe system assessments, follow the process of a safe system assessment within an infrastructure project, and explain the difference between safe system assessments and road safety audits, which is going to be a common question that you will be asked if you get into that, into safe system assessing, because you'll be talking to clients and others, and you say, well, we feel this, you should do a safe system assessment early in this project, and the usual response is, what is that? Or why, no, we do road safety audits. Why do we need to add this, and those sort of things. So we'll have a little bit of a chat about that. And of course, as I said, happy to answer your questions about the safe system assessment you're currently doing. If you're confused about any aspects of it and you'd like to ask that here, and that would benefit others probably. Of course, you're welcome to just email it through or ask for a one-on-one catch up and we can do that. But if you've got a question, there is a fair chance others might have a similar question or maybe would learn from your question. So feel free to type that into the chat or the Q&A. Kathy will relay those to me, or feel free to raise your hand and then we'll unmute you and we can have a chat about it. So recently I was doing a little bit of analysis of where we were sitting with safe system assessments across Australia and New Zealand and produced this little diagram to try to capture what different commitments had been made by different jurisdictions associated with safe system assessments in their state or territory or I suppose for New Zealand, national strategies, documents, or different commitments. And you can see there, I won't read through all the detail, I'll briefly sort of mention what's happening in each jurisdiction, because I think it's fascinating to see how safe system assessments have grown and have become something that is now entrenched in requirements in jurisdictions. That's predominantly down to proof of the value of this process within an infrastructure project. And that's sort of the next slide, is to show you how beneficial it actually was. They are with some independent evaluation outcomes. But let's just see what's going on. So Queensland, TMR has mandated safe system assessments. So that's within the road safety policy. And basically it says they have to be done on every infrastructure project. They don't specify anything associated with only big projects or only projects in every project. So the implementation of that, they're still sort of moving through, but it's becoming very common practice in TMR, and there's lots of TMR employees that have been through this course, and they're some of them are doing safe system assessments, but predominantly it's about understanding the process so they can engage consultants to undertake these assessment on different projects. There's nothing for local, there's no mandated requirement for local governments. However, we're starting to see an emergence of local governments committing to safe system assessments. One recent one was Gold Coast City Council, who have that in their road safety plan 2021 to 26 to start, to do them again on infrastructure projects. New South Wales very recently in their new 2026 road safety action plan, which is sort of a little picture there, they committed to safe system assessments at feasibility, functional design and detailed design stages of all Transport for New South Wales infrastructure projects. So again, a big commitment from the state and again, a lot of Transport for New South Wales staff trying to get their head around okay, well, how does this fit in with existing processes? You know, when's it best done? Who do we get to do it? Can we, you know, do some ourselves? And how does that all fit together? So exciting times there. New Zealand has moved to a thing called a safe system audit, which is where they've mashed together safe system assessments and road safety audits. And we're all still getting our head around how that's going to play out because it hasn't really been done before. It's acknowledging the overlap between safe system assessments and road safety audits and trying to minimise on that. There's a few other advantages to it, but that's where they're going. And again, in their Road to Zero strategy, they have a commitment to, well, it's a KPI actually. So one of the key performance indicators is how many projects are subject to safe system assessments. ACT's sort of starting to require it in some of the contract specifications, which is good. They don't have sort of a policy or requirement. Tasmania, a bit the same. Some major projects are requiring it. It's starting to integrate into funding programs as, you know, you can apply for funding, but we need a safe system assessment along with that. Victoria, I'll take you through this in more detail, has some specifics which South Australia has copied. And Northern Territory, again, like Tassie, putting it into specifications for major projects. Western Australia's gone completely the other way. Well, whole different route. Maybe here somewhere. Because, well, they've got what they call ROSMA, their road safety management system, and they believe the processes that they have within that system mean that safe system assessment is not warranted because they will achieve the outcomes through a different method, which is fine. It causes a little bit of confusion sometimes, but it's all good. So does anybody have any questions, Kathy, on that, or any things we should cover?
Thanks, Ken. So there's a question about, is there an expectation that safe system assessments are done somewhat independently of the design team in a similar way that road safety audits are expected to be?
Yeah, so great, excellent question. Prize for that. The expectation is that there is a level of independence. However, it's not as rigid as it is for road safety auditing. And in fact, the jurisdictions that have actually stepped forward and made statements on this, being Victoria and South Australia, that's out in the public realm, they've said that the person leading the safe system assessment needs to be independent in the same fashion as a road safety auditor. The team, however, they're okay if you include the designer or others, if that's the way you want to go. So it's trying to be a bit more collaborative in that approach. Interesting, fascinating, actually. Fascinating for me, probably not fascinating for the rest of the world. Maybe a few people on this webinar, but New Zealand has this interesting process where they go within a road safety audit, and they've always done this. They go before, so you go out, you get your plans as an audit team, you go out, you look at the site, you look at the plans, come up with what you feel are, your findings. Then you're mandated to have a meeting with the designer and the client to talk through what you're going to put in the report. And they have this discussion and iron out different bits and pieces and alleviate some confusion and the like. And then they present the report, finish the report and present it over to the project manager and designer and the like. And I sort of scratch my head, compromise the sort of independence of it and the like. And then I go, it's kind of the rest of Australia and New Zealand does it in this sort of back and forth fashion. Really, you hand over your audit report and then they come back with a whole lot of comments and then you scratch your head about them and you go, oh, well, I didn't know that, so I will change that one. But no, then they're trying to get me to, change my risk rating here, so we won't do that. And so it's an interesting one. But it does lend itself a little bit more to that collaborative style approach, which safe system assessments are kind of operating under, trying to get a few people together. So hopefully that makes sense. Great question. So theoretically, you can be involved in a safe system assessment on your project. Good practice, best practice would be that you would not be leading that. You would get an independent person to lead it, and they would be somebody who has appropriate skills in this area, has been to a course like this one, and also, you've got clear demarcation of responsibility. So it's very clear to everybody that they are not involved or not compromised in terms of their involvement in the project. Okay. Keep your questions coming in. That was a good one. Okay, where are we at now? I'm going to talk to this slide for a little bit of time, so get yourself comfortable. But I will, after I've talked to it for a while, I will get your insights and what you think about this. Now, this was an independent evaluation of the first 35, or no, maybe not the first 35, but 35 safe system assessments that were undertaken on major projects in Victoria, a while back, well, fairly early after safe system assessment framework was released. So these evaluation was done by, or led by Blair Turner, for those who know Blair, and so done with Arbs, and Kathy and I were discussing whether Phil was involved in this. So Phil, you can tell us in the chat if you were involved in it. No, he said no. Okay. So what it was to say, okay, we've got all these major projects, and I'm talking big, like I'm talking duplications of highways and bypasses of towns and major freeway interchange and extra lanes on freeways and all, like we're talking big projects here. And so what was done was, using a crash prediction model, they said, okay, if this project, which is going ahead, but hypothetically, if it wasn't done, right, what would the deaths and serious injuries be over the next 20 years in that area? So like, take the one which is the town bypass. Well, it's saying, okay, all the vehicles continue to go through the town over the next 20 years. How many people are going to be killed and seriously injured in that general scope of work of that upgrade? So they got these figures, and we're seeing there, so serious injuries, 7,900 and 344 fatalities in these areas over the next 20 years. So then each of these areas got a design, right? Because these upgrades were going to be happening. And these designs were produced by the big design houses, mainly, like, churning out the designs, following the standards, very well respected. And those designs, actually, I think 32 of them, and I have to check back, were subject to a feasibility stage road safety audit. Okay, so there had been some level of review and back and forth, and then it was handed over to a safe system assessment. But that original design that was handed over dropped the serious injuries to 6,700 and the fatalities down to 286 in using the prediction model. So then this safe system assessment was done. And they were done by a variety of consultants. I was involved in quite a number of them. Others were doing them. And the recommendations came back. Now, you're right in the process of this. So you're currently reviewing a design and you're producing recommendations to alter that design to make it better aligned with safe system principles. Okay, so all of those recommendations that you're making, so it's exactly the same process happened with these massive projects, and said, okay, you're doing a town bypass, and you're going with this cross section could continue. We recommend continuous barriers be installed, or this, these intersections are at grade crossroads. We recommend roundabouts or grade separations or these sorts of things. So what that did was dropped the number of serious injuries down to 3,890 and 167 fatalities using the prediction model. If they took the recommendations, and if there was multiple recommendations to sort of achieve the similar thing, they took the one that gave the highest safety return. Then what happened was that these safe system assessments were handed over, and there was enough information to understand what had been accepted and moved forward by the project team. So the project team got this report and they went, well, this is great. Okay, we will do continuous barrier systems. No, we can't grade separate that intersection. Instead, we're going to do advanced warning signs. And then through they went. And what that did is it brought the serious injuries up to 5,298 and 227 fatalities predicted over the next 20 years in these areas. So this is, it's really interesting what this tells me as a story. And I'll tell you that I'm keen for your insights as well. First thing it says to me is the stock standard design, pretty much using standards and guidelines of the time. Now, admittedly, a lot of these standards and guidelines continue to be improved, and we probably wouldn't see this now, 5-6 years later, but they improve things generally. You can't argue that a new major project is going to make things worse. Usually, there are circumstances where that might happen, but generally they make things better in terms of safety. So that's that one. This difference, though, that's kind of what we can do with what we know and what we have in our toolkit. If we're willing to take this leap and get some real, as much alignment with safe system principles as we possibly can. This difference here, this is probably the second most interesting difference. This difference is a combination of things. It's acceptance from designers and project managers and major project organizations and the like of what they believe is acceptable or what they're willing to do. Okay, it's sometimes it's cost, although some of these actually save money in terms of get better aligned with safe system principles, and it's a less expensive major project. But so cost sometimes that's certainly in there. The politics of it, the culture of it, and it's quite a rich mix in why some of these aren't accepted. Okay, so I say this. Well, I said the second most interesting. I'll show you the most interesting in a minute. But first of all, that difference is the advantage, the benefit of undertaking the process of a safe system assessment. It's literally going through the process that you've learned and that you're undertaking and that you're doing will take a design and improve it. and get it better aligned with safe system principles. And that's all within what they're willing to accept to do, the budgets they've got, or they can, find, and these improvements. Like, it's pretty exciting that just going through that process can do it. Now, I don't have a benefit cost on that or anything. Like, I don't know the additional costs of those, and that wasn't in this evaluation. However, regardless of that, I mean, we're building new stuff, and it can be built safer. The one that I will say is probably the most fascinating, well, maybe not, but is this. I mean, we've just talked about the safe system and our aspiration of nobody's killed or seriously injured. And we're spending, billions and billions of dollars here on infrastructure. And we've got independent sets of eyes with safe system knowledge giving all their recommendations. We've still got a residual death and serious injury. What's going on there? Now, to a degree, I say, well, this is probably shows that this is a fairly realistic evaluation because when you start to dig into what's going on here, you sort of see that even there's a few things. There's vehicle use and the like that we can't alleviate death and serious injury with infrastructure that we know of at the moment. Okay, motorcycles. Okay, we can lessen it a bit, but we really can't eliminate death and serious injury if motorcycles continue to travel at the speeds that they travel. And so that's factored in. Some of this high speed, inappropriate use of vehicles and these sorts of things, the infrastructure has its limitations of what we know we can do. So those sort of things. There are a number of sort of out of the realm of our particular thinking at the moment, or crashes that are predicted and are predicted because we've seen them happen in the past and we know they'll happen. That infrastructure becomes very hard to use as the only feature. So that's like things like crashes with a pedestrian walking along a rural road, for example. This is in the middle of nowhere, and there's no footpaths or anything like that, and there's no pedestrians generally, but for some reason this person's decided to walk along the freeway and they're struck, and so that becomes a very murky land use and how we sort of arrange these things and lots of other stuff. So there's a lot packed into what we call the residual there. But you might be saying, but hang on, Ken, didn't you say that a safe system assessment was holistic and looking at safer vehicles and safer road users and post-crash care and the like? So aren't we going to be able to address these with those questions and recommendations associated with that? And the answer is, well, a lot of those things are so macro across your jurisdiction that an individual safe system assessment on a town bypass, it might have suggestions around enforcement bays and areas where people can check that heavy vehicles have been loaded properly. How does that all work? Making sure that ambulances can get there and they've got phone reception and having pullover bays and these sorts of things. But a lot of the things associated with vehicles and the like are associated with we need design rule changes, we need all sorts of different encouragement of technology and safety features and all of this. It's so beyond the scope of an individual safe system assessment that this prediction model sort of just says, well, that's where it currently the trajectory is. So what this tells me is that absolutely do safe system assessment because they've got amazing immediate value, right? If we can grab on, we can save lives and prevent serious injuries immediately. Understand that they're not just doing safe system assessments alone is not going to eliminate death and serious injury for us into the future. It's going to do a pretty good job. We need to work with designers, and this is very much happening, to bring this down. One thing you'll discover is that the more safe system assessments that are done, the quicker this comes down. Because designers get these safe system assessments, they look at them, they go, okay, we can change that. Then the next design they do, they incorporate that in, they go, because they go, oh, that safe system assessment said that that's actually better. So let's do that from the start. So that's going to be good. We're going to try and work on this gap by, lobbying for more funding, political acceptance, commitment, educating designers and project managers and major project organizations about why we're pushing these things and the philosophies. And then we're going to work on getting this one down through innovation, new ways to think about designing, managing roads, land use, all sorts of exciting things there that we can suggest. And, hopefully we start to address some of this residual here, again, through innovation, through technology, through vehicle stuff, through policy and the like. So I told you I'd talk about it for a while. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, we have some questions. Is this particular training sufficient to leading a safe system assessment, or do we need to do a certain number of safe system assessments as a team member?
What a great question. So currently, they're the only jurisdictions that I suppose accredit and I'll talk about that shortly. Victoria and South Australia have lists of safe system assessments. They do not define it like road safety audits where there's, you're a team leader or you're a senior or things like that. It simply says you are a recommended safe system assessor or you're a pre-qualified safe system assessor in those jurisdictions and you can lead safe system assessments. For other jurisdictions, like it's going to be about like anything, I suppose, proving that you've got the skills and competencies and the like with your individual client. I suppose this is going to be good proof. It's a good start, but they may ask you to do a bit more proving that you have those skills and knowledge before they engage you to lead a safe system assessment on their $4 billion road upgrade project, which is fair enough because you want it to be you want some assurance there. But yeah, technically, you can lead safe system assessments in every jurisdiction apart from Victoria and South Australia with just this certificate. Really, technically, you don't even need this certificate. Like, you just gotta, there's no written requirements.
Is that how you started doing it, Ken?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, so we have a question about, does suicide by vehicle have an influence on this statistic? Phil's responded to Will's question saying, I think suicides are left out of crash statistics when they're confirmed as suicides. Do you have any more to share on that?
Yeah, well, that's spot on from Phil. So in Australia and New Zealand, if there is confirmation that it is suicide or intentional murder, essentially killing somebody with a vehicle or the like, it is not presented in our road trauma statistics and the like. And that is, that's up for debate. Like the Swedes, for example, would say, really? you don't think that that's death or serious injury on the road network, and you go, well, it is, but we think about what a road authority's capability and capacity is for a reduction of this trauma. It's well outside of that, but they'll say, well, no, you need to start thinking holistically about the society and working out these things. But in terms of the evaluation here and the prediction model and everything like that, those are not taken into these numbers, essentially.
Okay. That's all the questions we have for the moment.
Great. We will have our usual break at halftime, and we'll keep going. Now, I dot pointed, I don't like a slide with this many words, but I dot pointed out, I dot pointed out, I took from the Victorian Government Safe System Assessment Guidelines and the South Australian Safe System Assessment Guidelines, these dot points, which are around what are the benefits of a safe system assessment. Why do I want to make sure you're clear on this? Because you need to go out there and you need to convince people to start doing safe system assessments, because I just showed you that we can save more lives and prevent more serious injuries by going through this process. And that's, pretty important. We need to convince people. So great way of determining how a project proposal aligns with safe system principles. Clearly does it, nice graph, everybody can see it. That's good. Method to compare project design options from a safe system perspective. Now that's pretty exciting because we, as road safety auditors, told a road safety audit is not your vehicle to compare road design options. You would simply audit each option and provide them feedback on the different risks associated with each option. But with this, we have a way to sort of get a statement forward of which has better alignment with safe system principles and make further recommendations. So that's pretty exciting. Provides good information for changes that will move a project closer to safe system principles. That's excellent. Good method for assisting planners, designers, project managers to move the safe system approach from theory to practice. And this is a beauty, because the safe system is the way people talk about it, the definitions of it, how it's presented up front in a lot of strategies and guys, it's fairly high level sort of airy-fairy stuff that everybody generally agrees on. But translating philosophies and big picture stuff like that to on-ground decisions that we make can be a very challenging thing. So it's great that we have this tool now to assist us in doing it. A sound basis for future planning and design for road infrastructure. So some good advantages. And I mean, these are some of the reasons, plus the evaluation that we see now. Almost all jurisdictions starting to mandate this and integrate it into project processes. But let me talk about that process guidance. When do we do it? How do we do it? We've done how do we do it? When do we do it? What are the specifics we need to think about when we're engaging safe system assessors and the like? Okay, so the general guidance is the earlier you can do a safe system assessment, I suppose, the better. But you've got to have a little bit of meat on the bone. You want to be able to have a level of understanding of what's going or what's proposed, but not. But you don't want it to be down here after a sort of detailed design has been done. Why do you not want it down there? Well, that project's not going to change fundamentally. It's done. It's been funded. It's been detailed design's done. You talk about changing intersection form or the like, it just won't happen. So the value of the safe system assessment in the sense that it will question the fundamentals of a project is only an advantage if we do it early in the project. Now, road safety audits, that's another thing that's been often said about road safety audits. The earlier that, do them early and they can help out. And they have a similar advantages that you would say, yes, do a road safety audit early when we didn't have safe system assessments. It's just the process and the way safe system assessments are structured. They actually provide better value than the road safety audits at that early stage, is what we've discovered. The road safety audit process is just better served at that detailed design stage and post-construction and the like, because it's picking up very fine details and, pointing those things out. Safe system assessments can pick up very fine details, but just the way that they're often presented and they're a bit more effective down. And if we talk about those differences between the two, safe system assessments and road safety audits, they are getting closer together. Now, as I said, in New Zealand, they've just merged into one, but in Australia, we're seeing still some differences. Now, generally, they both are very good at picking up the likelihood of crashes. The severity of crashes, I'm going to say here sometimes for road safety. I put that little star disclaimer to say, well, the most recent release of the Austrians Guide to Road Safety Part 6, Road Safety Audit, puts further emphasis on that severity of crashes in road safety auditing. So hopefully we're getting better, and that's like, but I'm still seeing road safety audits that ignore the fundamentals of energy management and mistakes. And the classic is your high-speed signalized intersection. And it's going in, and the audit is just incredibly detailed and excellent at the likelihood. Sight lines to the signals, line marking, mast arms, LEDs, phasing, all of that good stuff. And it's so important. Absolutely, we need to ensure we've got all of that right. Advanced signage, whatever it is, no see-through effects. But there is just nothing written in there for when somebody does run the red light. It's all about stopping the crash happening. And that's great. We want that. Absolutely. Crank that up as much as we possibly can. But we do need to think about how bad is it going to be when it still gets through this. And that's why I say sometimes on this. Identify issues for exposure. Now, exposure has really not been separated out from likelihood in a road safety audit. It's just merged together. And there's some advantages to distinctly extracting exposure out as a risk element. And it helps you think about possible other ways to address some of these risks. Recommendations, they're both providing recommendations to improve road safety, and they consider all road users. The safe system assessment in theory is focused on that death and serious injury, whereas a road safety audit would include other injuries and minor stuff and more sort of some of those, what I would call traffic style issues, traffic engineering style issues, rather than sort of road safety engineering style issues. Investigates safer vehicles, people, potentially maintenance, and post-crash care. Safe system assessment, just with those qualitative questions, is better served in that space. Recommendations to really redesign the project. And so you've got more clout with a safe system assessment. You're told your job is not to redesign the project as a road safety auditor. They want to set traffic signals. Okay, you just make sure their traffic signals are as safe as they possibly can be as a road safety auditor. It's rare that the auditor says, well, we think roundabout should go in here, and that would give better safety outcomes. It does happen. It can happen. It's just rare. And this one encourages innovative design. I've talked to you this about, I think, module 1 or 2. I was talking about, well, if you have an innovative project that is going to reduce the amount of people killed and seriously injured on our road, but it's not done, right? I don't know what the next thing will be, but some more recent ones have been things like raised safety platforms, continuous barrier systems in narrow flush medians, the bicycle priority or shared path priority on raised crossings. These things are they're going to give us good reductions in death and serious injury. But if you simply follow a process of just doing a road safety audit on that, all that report will come back with is all of the risks of doing that, because that is all the road safety auditor is charged of doing, or the team is charged with doing. So you're doing a central barrier in a narrow flush median, it'll be all about nuisance hits, deflection into the all those things that you brought up when I put up that picture in the earlier module, and you were churning away with things that came in. Nowhere in the audit report will say that this is going to significantly reduce the number of head-on crashes and run-off road crashes and be better for motorcyclists and be better. No, it's not going to be there because that's not their job. Safe system assessment will do that. So it actually fosters innovation and moving some of these projects forward, which is pretty exciting. Safe system assessment is just more versatile as well. You can do it at a program level, you can do it at a whole community level, you can do it at a mine site level, really quite versatile from that perspective. But don't get me wrong, road safety audits still have their place and they're very valuable, and they should be done. In fact, they must be done as part of a project, but just push them to once a bit of scope is clarified, and then you're into details. In terms of a safe system assessment within the life cycle of an infrastructure project, we're talking about somebody needs to determine that they're going to do a safe system assessment, and then determine whether it's going to be what we call a full or a rapid. Now, I'm going to take you through the two definitions here. They're not that different. Okay, it's the same process generally, and you do the same thing and you use the matrix and you give recommendations, everything like that. So they're not that different. One streamlines a few bits and pieces. Obviously, that's the rapid. I'll take you through that shortly, but somebody's got to make that call. And it's going to be the client or the project sponsor or I like to think of it as whoever's going to be managing that road after everything's built. That's who should be making those decisions. Then the client team is, the safe system assessment team is selected. That'll be done by the client or designer or whoever's sort of running with that. And then there's some sort of exchange of information in the yellow here. We say, you have a commencement meeting maybe. Everybody's getting clear on the scope, asking lots of questions. What are you doing at this spot? What's that mean? What's over there? What are future plans in this area? And you're understanding the project context and the like. So there's no real defined way to do this. I mean, getting them to send over documentation and studies, and then I like to hold a workshop where you roll out the plan and you stand around and you talk about all these aspects of it, or you, I suppose, do it on Teams or whatever these days. But that exchange of information is required. So the safe system assessment team can get their head around the project so they can accurately score it, but they can also provide recommendations that are meaningful, aligned with the aims of the project, and are something that have a chance of being taken on. You're going to inspect the site and you're going to have a look at that from the sense of understanding how this new thing is going to fit within that road environment, how it's going to interface, how it's going to connect with the existing road environment, understand, what land use is going on, and, how people are using the current environment, how they might use the future environment. You're going to do the matrix for the existing conditions and the design. And if they give you 3 options, you'll do 3 matrices for the options and 1 for the existing conditions. And if they give you 100 options, you'll do 1 for the existing conditions and you'll do 100 matrices of options. Then you're going to consider other safe system elements through those qualitative questions that are in the Austroads guide. Identify treatments to improve alignment with safe system principles, things that could be altered in that design. It could be different intersection form, it could be addition of road safety hardware features like barriers or crash cushions. It could be other additional things. It could be information programs with the local school on how to use the new infrastructure. It could be enforcement bays or other activity. It could be, you're free to add anything you believe will lessen the death and serious injury in that area going forward. And you can suggest that. They're not obligated to take on anything. There's no regulatory power with a safe system assessment. This is advice to them. It's up to them what they take on. But you write all of that up into a report. We're in a sort of luxurious position now as safe system assessors that there's government templates available in a few jurisdictions, and it's getting us consistency with how reports are done and what specific information is there, and you're using one of those. And I encourage you to use that for future ones. Sure, rebrand it, like Victorian government has said, yep, rebrand it, use all the existing words in there, just let's all do the same, let's have the same output in terms of the format of it, the structure of it, the headings and the like. So that's all handed over, and the client then sort of takes that and looks at each of these recommendations. They'll look at the scores and they go, oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, and how do we address this? Okay, they've come up with recommendations, and then they will go through and make decisions about what they can and they can't do within the scope of their project. And then they amend the design and change the project to incorporate what's been accepted. And we we need that to happen. It needs to be that process. Sometimes at this stage, it sort of goes back to here and they say, okay, thank you for all of your recommendations. And we're going to do these 7 out of the 10 you provided. Can you please tell us what our safe system assessment scores will be if we take those on? And I kind of like that. And I kind of like that for a number of reasons. And I'm going to draw a little graph like this. Because if you've got the existing conditions and you've got a score of whatever it is, and then they've come up with a design and they hand that design over and you score that, right? You say you're improving road safety there and it's going down, your score's going down, your risk is going down, your safe system alignment's getting better. But here are our recommendations. And then you score those, right? They will then be able to sort of go, well, there, and we brought it down to here. Now, in a business case or trying to convince your director or your, or like to say, hey, are you doing everything we can to make this as well aligned with our governmental commitment of integrating, implementing the safe system, then this is pretty good proof, because you go, well, that's what we've got out there at the moment. That was our first crack at it. Maybe we did things, but then we got the safe system assessment and they were able to get more in there. And this, practically for these reasons, we can't do at this stage. Now, ideal world and go down to 0, but we're yet to see come up with ways to still function our transport network often with with it down to zero. Some bits and pieces we've been able to do that, but yeah, that's generally how it plays out. But I think that's a pretty good story to tell as a project manager and you know, putting it forward. How are we going on time here, Kathy? Yeah, I reckon it might be coffee time.
Certainly is.
If it was a Friday, we might say beer time, but it's coffee time.
It's a bit early. And it's not a Friday. Yes, absolutely. So I guess this is before you, yes, we'll have a quick break. And then before you do jump into the next bit, just a reminder, if anyone's got any questions or if you've gone out and done your site inspection and you've started writing up your matrices and you're not sure about something, feel free to pop it into the chat. If you're concerned about looking silly, pop the question anonymously into the Q&A, and it, as Ken mentioned earlier, it will benefit everyone in the group, I'm sure. So please don't hesitate to do that. But how long, Ken? For
5 minutes.
5 minutes. You're so generous today. Thank you.
Get a coffee.
Okay, good.
The record button.
So there's a great question that's come in during the break, which is, via the severity criteria, safe system assessments are just an excuse to further reduce speed limits and adversely impact my mobility. Can you discuss this viewpoint?
It is a criticism of the safe system overall often, but there's a few things I would say to that, and I'm sure others will have comments. The first one is that speed limits aren't okay, no, different tack. An area of road that is amazingly highly aligned with safe system principles is a racetrack, as in a car racing track. They generally have eliminated all the intersections. They have considered the impact of forces when vehicles leave the road and design features to accommodate that force. They have vehicles with high levels of safety features. They have alert and compliant road users. They have identified areas where there is possibility for interaction with vulnerable road users and put in place measures to ensure that speeds and operating around those areas is done in a manner that is very low chance of death or serious injury. So in those environments, you know, speed and speed limits can be very, very high in the general racetrack area. So it's not necessarily the speed limits. The other point is, though, that our speed limits are hideously inappropriate across Australia and New Zealand. Okay, we've grown up with it. We're all used to it. And sorry.
Okay, no, you're back. You just temporarily dropped out there.
Oh, what did you miss?
Your last word that I heard was high.
Hideously inappropriately high.
Probably that's the one.
It
was just me. Oh no, sorry, it was just me. I'm getting the words that my internet's no good. As you were.
No, thank you, though, Kathy. Do let me know if I do drop out. Yeah, so we are operating a system with energies that are far beyond what the infrastructure and the vehicles and the people can handle at this stage in their travel, and it would not be accepted by other industries. And yet, because it's sort of evolved over time and the way we're running with it. It's sort of generally accepted, and it's very easy to blame others and to jump straight to a individual's errors being the problem, not the speeds and the things, but inherently sort of unsafe. And you know, the analogy, which I'm not sure I used in this course yet, I always like this one, is sort of building the high-rise building with balconies and you know, saying, well, no, people need to learn to not step off the balcony, and you know, they shouldn't go out on the balcony if they're drunk, and they shouldn't go out on the balcony if you know they're not alert, and we'll draw some lines and we'll make sure that you know there's a little bit of area between them, a little bit of clear zone between them and the edge of the balcony, and you know, we'll put up some warning signs, and you know, everything will be good. Now and then you know, they probably get to the point they go, oh well, no, we'll put some barriers on the corners around the building, because that's probably higher risk that they'll fall off the building in these corners, not like in little patches of barriers. So you know, we don't sort of accept that level of energy transfer in that environment, but when it's a road and it's roadside and trees or other things, it's pushed all back sort of to the driver to not make the mistakes and the like. So it's an example where society understands energy and energy management and the amount of force that can be handled. And yeah, but I suppose the options from the building perspective are to say, well, you can't build a 2-story building or a 3-story building because too much energy and it will fall, or put barrier systems up, railings up, so people don't fall off these buildings very often. And so they opted for investing in the infrastructure to ensure that you can have that level of energy transfer and force sort of eliminated. And it's the same sort of analogy with speed, isn't it? Like you can say, well, we've got the choice here. We can say either you're not going to put the barrier systems in and the like, we're going to have to lower the speeds to levels that are more tolerable, because the occasional person will run off the road and hit a tree and the energy transfer will be bad. Or we can put the barrier systems and keep the speed high. The choices. So great question though, and yeah, it can sometimes look like that. We also get criticism as safe system assessors, as you may be, that we've just got a suite of treatments that we just keep banging on about. You know, flexible barriers in the roadside, raised intersections, roundabouts, raised pedestrian priority crossings, raised, things. Why? Because they all align really well with safe system principles and they're not doing it. Like, give us your designs from the start with that in and we won't be recommending it. Or, tell us an alternative that gets us high alignment with safe system principles. And we'll happily suggest that. These are just the ones we currently know about. Kathy.
Love it, Ken. Love it. Question. For heavy vehicles, what are the thresholds for the severity rating? I.e., what percentage of heavy vehicle constitutes an increasing or decreasing factor in the severity matrix? Assuming that the number of vehicles is already catered for in the exposure rating, then you don't need number of heavy vehicles in the severity rating, but more of a percentage of heavy vehicles?
That last bit, yep, it is. It's around the proportion of heavy vehicles. You kind of like, what is the chance it'll be a heavy vehicle involved in this incident with more energy, and you really, it's becoming a judgment call and a bit of subjective thinking. But in general, we sort of think 20% plus of heavy vehicles, and you're starting to think, okay, we're in a position where we're getting more heavy vehicles now. We've got more chance of them being involved in incidents. They've got more mass, there's more energy, the severity outcomes are going to be a little bit worse. And you would sort of maybe ratchet it up from that. If you're up at 80% heavy vehicles, you go, wow, okay, well, we're on the mine site or something. But you're going to go, well, if something happens here, we're pretty confident it's likely to have the energy of the larger vehicle. So we're going to factor that in almost fully. So it's not a precise science on that one. Yeah, and there's a bit of judgment required.
Lovely. Thank you, Ken. That's all the questions for the moment.
Great. Really good questions coming in, though. Exactly what I was hoping for with the little extra bit of time we've put in this course. Okay, I want to just point you at a couple of the jurisdictional pages that give you more information and give you the ability to register as recommended safe system assessors or pre-qualified as they would in South Australia. So Victoria currently running off the Vic Roads website. I'm sure that'll change in amongst their many department title changes, but safe system engineering, and this is where you sort of find the guidelines and templates and things in there. But the bit that I want to talk about, which will be relevant to some of you who want to progress onto an established register of recommended safe system assessors, is this process. So it says, if you are interested in becoming getting onto this list, you would sort of flag that with the safe system engineering team, who would just simply say, okay, you should do a course or prove your knowledge, existing knowledge from some other way. So you flag it with them, but you won't need to do that because you've already moved into this next phase, which is do this course. Then what they ask you to do is to gain some experience by doing a safe system assessment. Now, you don't need to do it with somebody who isn't a safe system assessor, but you just need to get out there and do one. And you need to do the full process. So unfortunately, the mock one we're getting you to do doesn't qualify because you don't have a real client you're working with, and we've intentionally not given you projects with heaps of background information and heaps of stuff, because we didn't want to have you working on this for a week or something. We just wanted to ensure that you understand this process, and if you want to help find a project, it may be that you say to a project that wasn't going to get one done, hey, can we do this because it'll add value, and I'm also interested in practicing my skills, and then you have you do your safe system assessment, and then you submit it. You hand that over, and they review it and make comments. And if they deem that you understand the process, you know how to write all this up, you genuinely understand the safe system and know what we're pushing for, you're onto the list. And the list is simply just a PDF, and they call it the recommended safe system assessors, and the list goes on, and it's got the organisation email and the like. South Australia is a bit more open with how they do this. They simply say, do this course. Give us a certificate that says you successfully completed this course, and we'll add you onto the list. So they're saying that our assessment and the quizzes that you've been doing and the like will suffice for some level of proof of competency, and you'd become a pre-qualified safe system assessor from the South Australian government, and they too have their list of these pre-qualified safe system assessors. So you're able to do that once you get that successful completion certificate. Now, in terms of a little bit more detail on, I said what Victoria and South Australia do in terms of when they do safe system assessments. I'm not going to go into the detail of this because whichever jurisdiction you're working in, you get an idea of what their requirements are. But Victoria sort of says, and South Australia say, if the project is less than $2 million total estimated cost, you could do a rapid safe system assessment if you believe that it is required, like a formal safe system assessment is required. There's a bit of flex in that. Say if you don't believe it's required, you still have something to prove that you've done your, you're meeting your requirements and obligations to do the best we can in aligning with safe system principles. So you need to think of another way that that's happening. It could have been that the whole program was done and thought about under that sense or something else. But between 2 and 5 million in terms of TEC, where we're at full safe system assessments for complex projects or projects in high-speed environments or other projects that have significant risk of fatal serious injury or anything innovative. But you can do the rapid one if it's a lower risk area, maybe a very urban, low-speed area or something like that, or repeat assessments. So you've done basically one assessment and then they want you to, assess a new option that they've created or something like that. And then above 5 million, it's full safe system assessments for all, except for if you're doing that repeat assessment. So what is this difference between this full safe system assessment and rapid? Now I say rapid, Queensland will call it a light, but probably the easiest way for me to sort of talk to this is to go through the list of what's in a full safe system assessment and just cross out some that you don't need to do in a light potentially. So full safe system assessment, you're going to do some sort of commencement meeting and that full exchange of information and talking to them and the like, and that's sort of potentially not required. It's probably a good thing to do in a rapid, but you may have other ways that you got the information or it's a very simple job or something like that. Background and context, you're going to need that. Workshop, and workshops sort of following on from that commencement meeting or digging into some details, understanding things. That's kind of optional in a full, but it's certainly something that most rapids would not have. So the site inspection is an option to take out in a rapid. Now, a lot of rapid safe system assessments still do a site inspection. I think it adds great value and you can sort of see things, but the idea is that you should be able, you could just look at a design and look at photos or street view or whatever it is and get a general sense for what is aligning well or not aligning well with safe system principles. So assessment of the existing conditions and the design options using the matrix in both. Consideration of other elements, so those qualitative questions. Okay, they're out in a rapid safe system assessment. So you don't need to go through that holistic thinking. Okay. And so you identify changes that could improve alignment with safe system principles in both. You do a report in both. One's just got a little bit more in it. And then the client, decides what they're going to adopt and the project team can rescore if necessary and scope's amended. So there you go. There's the sort of differences. That pretty much covers what I wanted to cover in terms of the policy and the way safe system assessments are playing out in Australia and New Zealand and what people might be asking of you as a safe system assessor, how you can get onto one of those official registers if you would like to do that. But I'm open for any questions now around any of that stuff. This last thing I've got on screen, safe system road environments, is just a nice little exercise for us to finish, which will very quickly have one more last look at some different road environments and note down what aligns highly or doesn't align highly with safe system principles.
Thank you, Ken. Some questions we've got for you. So regarding the site visit part of a full safe system assessment, could it be considered an optional component? So the issue here is that there's often delivery projects in Queensland that are 1,000+ kilometres away.
Yeah, so it depends on what your jurisdiction decides. I mean, I'm taking that out of the Victorian guidance. I mean, I think in that case, you could call it a rapid easily, or yeah, maybe you sort of exclude it for the practical reasons that you can't, but you do everything else in there. Yeah, it's always a challenge. I get the same question when I run the audit course in Queensland or in Northern Territory or the like, or they're like, well, do we always have to go to site? I'm like, well, yes, but you may decide to title it something else, or be very clear about what the limitations have been from that practical perspective. I mean, don't lose sight of what the purpose of this whole process is, and it's just to improve projects aligned with safe system principles, and you can do a pretty decent job of getting it fairly moved ahead from the desktop, and then you'll get some extra information potentially from the site. But the bulk of the information is often found from the desktop.
If you've worked on safe system assessments before or alongside in a team, do those safe system assessments count towards going on the register? Are you able to submit those, or is it only after you've done this particular training?
No, if you've done them before and you were leading that assessment, then yeah, you're fine to submit those. So the order doesn't matter. It's about leading the assessment and ensuring that you're going through the process correctly, and making sure you get exposure in the right spot, likelihood and severity, and that your recommendations aren't just like, oh, put up a warning sign. That well, it could be if they've done a really good job of everything, but if you're saying put up a warning sign and it's leaving the high energy, high speed style crashes untreated, then I'm going to say, well, you might know the process and where to fill things out, but you haven't grasped the concept of safe system in the sense that we're leaving high energy available there. So yes, to answer the question, yeah, no, the order doesn't matter.
Does the country matter? If you've done one in New Zealand, would that count?
That's fine. No, country doesn't matter.
Great. I think we're right to carry on.
Well, let's jump through this in a relatively quick manner. Okay, so I just want to talk these different road environments and what aligns highly with safe system principles in each of them. And why am I doing this right at the end of the course and after we've done a lot of these discussions about different bits and pieces? Well, the reason is that when we give you that certificate, you'll have only done a safe system assessment on one road environment type, whatever that design is we gave you. Although it sounds like some of you have already done safe system assessments on other ones, but most of you might be, this is your first crack at it, and it was in a local street environment, right? But the certificate we give you doesn't say, safe system assessor for local streets. It says safe system assessor, or successfully completed the safe system assessment course. So I just want to absolutely sort of be sure that you've got a grasp of what kind of things are we looking for in these road environments that will have high alignment with safe system principles, that if you're doing a safe system assessment on these road environments that you'll be adding as recommendations, or at least thinking about it in the right context. So I think I'll do a few of these as an interactive, get you to type a few things in, clean out the prize cabinet for this calendar year. Kathy will be taking lots of notes, and some of them I'll just run through and say a few things. But let's do the residential environment here. So we're going to do this where you can type it in, but I want you to put in exposure or likelihood or severity. Okay, so if you suggest something, put the E or L or S. So this is your typical urban default, 50 kilometre per hour, local street, accessing onto a bigger road, a sort of major collector road, and you can see, pedestrian, cyclists, bike cars, and what do you think we could suggest as safe system assessors if we're given this type of road environment to get better alignment with safe system principles? Pop it into the chat, put exposure or likelihood or severity, and give out a few prizes. Okay. Starting to come in now. Sorry, I was wondering whether people either didn't understand or I dropped out off the face of the earth, but they all came in a big flurry. Thank you. Well, Henry was like leagues ahead of anybody else in terms of timing, so you can have a prize for that. Kathy, I hope you're taking note of these. So traffic calming measures in terms of likelihood and severity, and that's great. So local area traffic management is going to lessen speeds in an area, and well, it'll also increase alertness of drivers. So speed reduction is a reduction in the chance of a crash happening and the severity of that. And Hugh's come in nicely there and actually dot pointed a few of the particulars of what could be done in local area traffic management. And also chucked in one that is another definite prize winner, which is the idea of, does that road need to actually access out further onto that network? And do we need that intersection? And are there ways to reduce the exposure? So that will be an exposure one. If you were to cul-de-sac that or block it off, that would reduce the exposure to crashes because there'd be less vehicles utilizing this as a through road or the like, and there's no exposure to the intersection crashes because there is no intersection. So that's an exposure one. So I think that's a wonderful idea because it really, when we have this high permeability in through these residential areas for passenger vehicles and the like, they become rat runs and they become areas where we get exposure that shouldn't be there, and potentially also some of the highest speeds because it's being used as a through route and those sorts of things. It's really good. And Phil came in just after Hugh there with this very similar one. And so we've got ideas of pedestrian refuges, which would be really a likelihood factor, that one. Possible crossing points, different treatments in terms of getting speeds down, providing pedestrian priority. These are great. I think Lucas has got a good point here. Your local area traffic management can reduce exposure, so reduce the number of vehicles that are using an area. So I think that's prize-worthy in pointing that out. Again, I remind you with your, when you're a safe system assessor, I mean, making a call on that yourself is probably beyond our scope. Like certainly if this road was to get speed humps along it or something like that, I wouldn't say that that's going to reduce exposure, even though, there's a chance, but I just not have the confidence to do that specifically. If some traffic modeling person told me, that, I'd go, okay, cool. Well, yep, I can include that, but I just wouldn't make that call off my own bat. So pavement markings and the things and little and tweaks like that, will be a likelihood reducer. Indenting parking, so that's an interesting one because what that will do is just as that treatment alone, it will probably reduce the likelihood of crashes, potentially by opening up sight lines and the like. However, there's a chance that it would increase vehicle speeds because of a wider pavement area and just faster. So that then would possibly increase likelihood backup and your severity will go up as well. So if you're going to remove parking or indent parking or these sort of things, take advantage of that road space you've created for either bigger curb build outs or dedicated separated bike facilities, but also complementing with some speed reduction techniques as well. And Phil's saying a very similar thing there. So, okay. Well, that was good. I mean, right there, I get confidence from this group that you're thinking along the right lines. You've got exposure and likelihood and severity pretty well clarified. You're targeting the right things. We won't do this one as a group, but I will give a prize if anybody can tell me where this is. They're doing unfortunately a black spot investigation of this site, not a safe system assessment due to the number of pedestrians killed and seriously injured. Nicole was in first with Bondi Junction. Good. And if you've got an eagle eye, it's actually written up there, isn't it? But yeah, so I mean, these sorts of environments, when you think about that movement of place, I mean, we're in the place for people, or we're in that, high place value, really low movement function, and thus, the environment and speed for vehicles really can be absolutely blanketed down. People sometimes really want to block pedestrians from this free permeability and corral them to a single crossing point. That is a movement related way of thinking and potentially causes other serious issues. So more, measures to make this almost your shared zone environment or completely blocked off from passenger vehicles as well is really the way we would sort of start to be moving these areas. Scramble crossing potential for that to be an option if you move to that sort of signalisation. It really does then dictate that this is more of a movement corridor, because that's the idea of you have to press a button and wait to cross it. Yeah. But the principle's good. Random traffic trivia or road related trivia. I'll give a prize to the person who can tell me the official name for a scramble crossing. See if anybody got that one. Kathy, add that to the trivia night. Lucas.
No, Betty was in.
Oh, Betty was first. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We are giving out. Barnes Dance, because it's named after Mr. Henry Barnes. Was it Henry?
I don't know. I don't know who it was named after, but I like that you know, Kat.
Yeah, because I know useless trivia. I mean, people would think it's because maybe you can do like a barn dance in the middle of the, road for that period of time. But it's no, it was named after Henry or Harry Barnes. No, not you, Henry. All right, carry on. Sorry.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, Kent, did you
What's
see
that?
that question from Phil about those types of bollards be bought in a design that stops them becoming projectiles if hit? I would think they would need to be deeply embedded into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. Something to think about. I don't know the sort of structuralness of it. I think they were originally there with a sort of ropey cord thing to try and stop pedestrians doing exactly what they were doing, and pedestrians just walking on the road until they found a spot or stepping over them or tripping over them and these sorts of things. So they were taken away. I mean, yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. My preference would be so many features to slow vehicles through this area that like it is impossible to get up to speed to be able to strike one that turns it into a projectile. So much traffic calming and the like is where I much prefer to be at. But I think it's a valid point. Okay, these mixed-use arterials are challenging, and the reason they're challenging, like we looked at in the those artistic sort of impressions example, is that we're trying to cater for often it's a high movement corridor, it's a high place value, it's got, when you do your smart roads or road use hierarchy, you see it's vehicle priority, bus priority, bike priority, pedestrian precinct. It's just like, oh my God, we're trying to do everything with this road. And the reality is when we get to these sorts of spots, we are really going to look to prioritize the safety of the most vulnerable in terms of our decision making around that. And we can implement features that mean that vehicles go through there in a reasonable speed, but when things go wrong or in the areas where there is a much higher chance things will go wrong, that they are at appropriate speeds. So, like for me, the first thing is that these areas are, long, straight, and really nothing physically stopping vehicles going quite high speeds. And we have the opportunity there with further progress in terms of raised platforms and the like to at a arterial level think about traffic management and management of speed. So look, like even simply raising some of the intersections, reduces it from that, real straight fast run possibility, raising some of the crossing points. If you're worried about buses, for example, you could sort of have, the vehicle part raised and some separators or something and a cushion for a speed cushion or something in there and stop people, using it as a run around bypass route if they want to go really fast or the like. But so there's a bit of thinking that can be done around severity of crashes, speed management in terms of speed limits, certainly options around variable speed limits for times of activity is good. I like the use of like a dwell on red or rest on red style treatment with different signals in these sorts of environments, which on your Friday night, your Saturday night is quite heavily populated with intoxicated pedestrians, and at the hours where we see the risk really up in those times. So maybe like from 10 o'clock on Friday night till 4 in the morning, and same on Saturday night. It's not a vehicle, like getting vehicles through there is not a priority. So, we can default the signals back to red to mean that, vehicles have to slow down and basically come to a stop, and then it will drop to green, and then it'll go back to red. And, so you swap that around from the way it usually is. So those sorts of treatments will reduce the likelihood of crashes. If you're complementing that sort of stuff with some raised features, you're in a great space. If we start to do things like pedestrian fencing and the like, you might get safety benefit out of that, but you will start to erode any place value you've got there, or you're trying to keep there. And there's a bit of conscious decisions to be made around that with the strategic planners or the planners of the area, or those, thinking about the management of these areas. Automatic speed limit compliance would help a lot. I agree with that. The idea of getting vehicles and ensuring that they stick to different speed limits that have been set appropriately would be a wonderful thing.
It's an interesting comment from Lucas about the automated pedestrian phases implemented during COVID generated a lot of negative feedback from the community. If dwell on red is to be used, a lot of education and communication will be needed first. It's an interesting one. I mean, the license speed trial and been implemented. And a lot of that because of the hours, I think, that they are implemented. I suppose most of them have been cross roads. Potentially, people don't even realise that they're the other lane doesn't have a green phase. So maybe that's it that resolves the COVID and things like, because it was red on all legs. But of course, if you're approaching, you're just every red when I go down this. No. You all right? No, I was trying to work out if it was me or if it was you, but it's not me this time.
Okay. You can sort of hear me?
You sound like you're underwater.
Oh, okay. I'm not. Kathy, you take over and take people through the how to finish the course.
Yeah, you jump back in. Okay, thanks. All right, that was fun. Now, sorry to chop and change a little bit there, but I'm sure Ken will be with us above water shortly. So just to recap on what you need to do to finish the program. So we're in the November program here, and you're at the Complete Your Safe System Assessment section. Someone's already, no, lots of people have already submitted. Hold on. I'm in the New Zealand one. My apologies. I was like,
Kathy, I'm back.
Yeah, that sounds better. And I was just showing everyone the wrong course. So cooking with gas here. There we go. Two people have submitted. Well done, team. So it is due next week, and ideally do get it in before this side of Christmas, because we know how the festive season gets. So you do jump in here. You've got your template document, your graph generator, and your design. And if you've already been in touch because you've wanted to swap designs and that sort of thing, that's absolutely fine. The very last things for you to do once you have submitted it is there will be a quiz at the end of this session, the final quiz. So there's that one there. And the other thing is that you need to just give us some feedback on the program, very short multiple choice style question, feedback on the program, and then your certificate will become available. So that's once you've done all your quizzes, you've done your both assignments and they've been marked, and you've done the course feedback. And then we'll also send you the truckload of prizes and hard copy of certificate in the post, hopefully in time for Christmas.
Great.
Ken, how are you sounding now?
Hopefully good. Am I good?
Yes, you are good. Thank you.
Loud and clear. Thank you for letting me know to those who typed it in. Oh, hang on. That's the thing. Yeah, that's where we were just getting to. Hopefully you're seeing that now.
Yep.
And yeah, so just a couple more sort of road environments to tick through. Maybe how long have we got? 10 minutes or so. Okay, let's do this one, and then I'll just run through the rest. Anybody got any ideas? So this is a 100 km/h default road, and it's got about 700 vehicles a day, maybe 1,000 vehicles a day on it. It's fairly good standard for that volume, but you can see it's got sort of unsealed shouldery bits and the like. Got any ideas on what we could possibly suggest as safe system assessors in these environments, and whether it would impact on exposure or likelihood or severity? I suppose really that question is, how are we going to eliminate or minimise death and serious injury on these types of roads? Okay, seeing some good ideas coming in here now. That's nice. We've got a couple of lots of people wanting to seal the shoulders and rightly identifying that is a reduction in the likelihood of crashes, and we will see, yes, less crashes happen if we reduce. If we seal the shoulders. And who was in there? Melanie was first on that, I think. Surprise there. We've got ideas of audio tactile line marking on the edge and the centre from different people. That's good. And that will reduce the likelihood. Again, it's likelihood. Signage, people want to eventually remove the trees, which will reduce the likelihood of crash again. Challenges doing that often these days. Then, barrier systems will reduce our severity, but I suppose at a strategic level, the cost of putting barrier systems on these roads, for us thinking where we're going to do those investments is it's going to be an interesting one. Potentially lighting likelihood, more frequent guideposts likelihood. So it's interesting, you see, we've very much gravitated to a whole lot of likelihood factors, haven't we? Reducing the likelihood of crashes on these roads. And this is where we're going to have a lot of challenges. And because it links with that strategic funding and the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of kilometres of road that we are trying to transform to better align with safe system principles, we can't afford to do a lot of the severity reduction techniques that still allow the high speed. So we're into a position where we either have to start reducing the speeds on these types of roads, or we've got to invest in the infrastructure to keep speeds high. But in the transition, I think the likelihood factors that we still can do and we know reduce the likelihood are very good, and we saw a lot of you putting those in. I feel that with some good strategic thinking and good work with the community and the like, we will move to start to see some of these roads. A lot of these roads have reduced operating speeds through speed limit reductions, through different enforcement techniques, be it point to point or in vehicle, and that will reduce the likelihood and sometimes the severity of crashes as well. We're a bit away from the community accepting this in some areas. Some areas they're okay with it, but in a lot of areas they're just not quite there yet. So that's why I say a sort of very thought through strategic approach to this is required. I think that the one thing I want to say as safe system assessors, you don't need to get too caught up in the acceptability of it or not. It's better to put it into your report and have them, and analyze whether they think they can do it or not, rather than predict that the community won't accept it and not put it in. And that will give us more of more power of the weight of safe system assessors saying, well, yes, it might be low volume, and there's some more things we can do to reduce the likelihood of crashes, but we still fundamentally have an environment where the travel speed, when things go wrong, is beyond what the human body can tolerate. I see a question's come in there. What are my thoughts on photoluminescent line marking and signage?
Prize for that question.
So it's a gimmick. I shouldn't be absolutely that harsh on it. There are environments where it could be helpful, and then my take on it is that that is shared paths without lighting, right? The way that they work, and we have investigated them, is that if you've got headlights on, there's not much use to them at all. The photos, and I've done this myself, and if anybody's in or around the Bendigo area, go out to the shared paths that sort of head out from the lake out to Epsom area and the like, and get in the dark area, and you can sort of just see it glowing, right? And then get your phone out, turn the flash off and take a photo. And it looks like it's the brightest thing like ever. It's quite amazing. So what your eyes see and what the photos online and everything like that is quite different. But that being said, in those environments where you don't have lighting and you can see the path ahead. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. But down on like Paynesville Road in these sorts of areas, that the headlights are absolutely adequate. So I think just think about where you're going to put them, and again, like another danger in road safety is that things like that people see as like, well, this is how we're going to solve. But it's not. There are fundamental changes that we know about that can really do it. Anyway. But I'm always up for innovation, and there's spots for that, and there's places where it should be used and invested, but just don't think that putting that out there. I certainly won't be suggesting it in any future safe system assessments I'm doing unless it's in an area where for some reason headlights can't get there, and I'm worried about something specifically with the geometry, which would be only a few circumstances. Any other comments came in on that?
Yeah, there are. So there's a comment from Webb, who's Christy, and the glow in the dark lines are very slippery and need to be kept quite clean. This environment would indicate that they wouldn't be practicable. That's coming from regional Victoria. So,
All right.
hmm.
Yeah. So interesting to see how they play out in that. Yeah, slipperiness. Good comment. Okay, I'll just knock these ones off very quickly in our last couple of minutes. So when we're at the higher volume rural roads, this is where the money is going to be put to ensure that we keep speeds high, because these are freight routes. These are major between town centre route, population centre routes. And so this is where we'll see, central barrier systems, outer barrier systems, continuous barrier systems. When we get to, intersections, we want to see, roundabouts ideally. And, they complement beautifully with a central barrier system, because you can collect a few access points and the like, give them an acceleration lane potentially, and they can U-turn if they need to go back the other way. So we can really create these safe system routes, quite well aligned safe system routes. It's a fun exercise to sort of plot this out on a 20 kilometre or 50 kilometre route and think about strategically placement of these types of intersections and how many access points you can collect in a reasonable way to get them to go the wrong way, to U-turn or other things. So that sort of thinking can take place. High volume outer suburban arterials, these are where traffic priority has been assigned and pedestrian priority is low, and it's not a place, it's a movement corridor, and it's vehicles, and that's what it is. Okay, if that's what it is, that's when we start to create it in the environment that can be done with high alignment with safe system principles. And that means that we ain't having cyclists mixing with traffic like this, even though they've got their own lane. They're still mixing with traffic, because it doesn't take much for somebody to drift into that at 80 kilometres an hour into their lane and hit that cycle. So complete off-road shed path facilities or cycleways still need to address speed at the intersection to within tolerable levels, so raised intersections, blocking off as many of the access points as you can, pedestrian underpasses, pedestrian overpasses, eliminate control, reducing the exposure to crashes, and you're kind of almost making urban motorways out of these types of environments. Easy to say, more challenging to do, but the principles are there. And sort of major freeways or motorways or urban freeways. These have high alignment with safe system principles in the sense that there's not at-grade intersections, there's continuous barrier systems, there's lots of features to reduce the likelihood of crashes, grade geometry, lighting, all of these features, and they generally perform quite well. They are free-flowing, very low crash rates, and when they're absolutely saturated, the amount of death and serious injury is very low, because nobody's got enough speed to do that damage. Lots of them minor bingles. When the freeway or the motorway flow breaks down is where we see some high, like the frequency of high severity incidents dramatically kicks up. So this is where the managed motorway concepts really are a highly aligned safe system in the reduction of likelihood, but also potentially severity. So this is where we have, lane use management systems, ramp metering, and, so lane use management, different speed signs and ability to cross off lanes. But, you can monitor and proactively or use sophisticated algorithms to drop the speed limit as the flow is about to break down, because the headway and all of those, smart traffic people can work that all out for you. So you can sort of hold the hand of the motorway as it breaks down. And full containment for these, and grade separations or other ways to minimise the speed and angles and the like at intersections. I jumped to the last one there quickly because I just want to say thanks to everybody. I know it's busy time of year and there's so much going on. To take time out of your busy schedule to learn a new process and to really be actively trying to reduce death and serious injury in projects that are going on out there or the existing road environment, I think it's amazing. I think it's a great tribute to you all. And if you ever need any help or just want sample reports or connections in any space, let me know. Thank you, Kathy, and we better let people go because we ticked over.
Yes, we do. And I'm just going to share one last photo because I promised Phil, there's Ken back in the day. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your participation and have a good festive break.
Bye. That hair. Bye.